I was going through some content that I shot a while back at this event and realized I wish I didn't use a gimbal and instead use a different camera rig, which has led me to create this video in hopes that you don't make the same mistake as me. So welcome to a guide to camera stabilization so you don't make the same mistake as that guy on YouTube. I'm gonna go through the 5 camera rigs that I use, when you should and shouldn't use them, and a few tips on how to make them even better. And these are just general rules, so feel free to follow them, and as you grow, you can tastefully break these rules. Let's start with tripods. The obvious answer here is interviews. That's always where you're gonna see these, because they're not going anywhere. Another place I love to use this is pieces of content where I let the subject tell the story and don't distract with any camera motion. That creates a simple, clean look. Accompanied by some great audio, you'll have a fantastic piece of content. When using just a tripod, you have a huge opportunity to just focus on composition. And you can find some age-old composition rules to follow to be able to dial in your shot perfectly. We're here to tell stories. And camera movement is always just a piece of that, and sometimes being static is the right option. And next up is the slider. Some people use these in interviews. Personally, I don't, but I'm not your boss. You can do whatever you want. The slider can create a surreal feeling, having clean, smooth motion, and pairing that with the static shots of a tripod, you can really tell an awesome story. My favorite place to use a slider is on product shots, to be able to get that kind of surreal feeling to show that this product is something larger than life. When you have something in the foreground and also something in the background, this creates a parallax effect where in that foreground it's moving by much quicker than in the background. It's something beautiful. And now we get to the gimbal. The gimbal is another spot where you can kind of create that surreal feeling, and it's fantastic for walking shots or when your subject is moving throughout the scene. If you're doing this on your own, autofocus is going to be your best friend and your biggest enemy. So you really have to play your cards right and check every shot, because sometimes that focus be jumping all over the place. Oh, hang on, let's redo that. And try to avoid close-ups with this, and here's why. This is a shot here that I used in a Christmas video, and at first glance, it's a good shot. It's like a nice introductory shot to the scene in this kitchen, but if you have a trained eye of any kind, you can see the shakiness. This floating camera effect is what it's called. That's a distraction to the story. Would have been better for us to use a slider in this situation rather than trying to stabilize this shot here when we use the gimbal. Movement is its strength. Continue to move with it. Otherwise, you're just gonna get kind of that floating effect. Using the gimbal tastefully as opposed to consistently will actually be more valuable for having a gimbal in the first place. And now we move on to my beloved Handheld. I love Handheld. And it's because it makes it feel like the viewer is actually there. It's quite raw. It's also easy to react around things, to move quickly and make sure you get these different shots if they're happening on the fly. And these are 2 of the big reasons why documentaries are almost always handheld. As a polar opposite to the static shots in the tripod, just by having that slight little bit of shake in your shot, it creates this energy behind it that you may want in your story.
Action.
And other people will actually prefer using a shoulder rig, which is an awesome option if you're shooting for many, many hours a day, but that's normally not the case for me. So I like having that just pressed up right against me. I can look down, see my shot pretty easily. Every once in a while, I gotta huck that thing up on my shoulder and just see that thing ride for a minute, and then I get pretty sore. Gotta get over that. When shooting things like events and you're gonna have a lot of fast cuts, one of the things I love to do is to just use your hips. Come on. Just getting the motion from your hips from one side to the other can create a good effect on your footage. Another one of my favorites is actually the neck strap. I know this sounds kind of bogus, but I see this as a legitimate rig to use just because it's such like this discreet kind of shooting feel. I mean, who's gonna look at this guy and say that he's creating 4K content for different companies? This is something I love to do because when I come out with my actual handheld rig, one of the first things I get is, are we shooting a movie? Are we shooting a movie, bro? Honestly, I'd get by better a lot of the time if I just looked like a photographer with a somewhat nicer lens using my A7S III with a neck strap. I mean, look at me, don't I just like look like a tourist right now? When shooting video with a neck strap, you wanna make sure you've got this thing fully extended having that tension is going to create a little bit more of that smooth look if that's what you're looking for. So again, these are just guidelines that you may want to follow for a little while, but as you kind of grow, you can again tastefully break these rules and turn them into your own. Rules were made to be broken, or records. I don't know. How many things are made to be broken? But as you watch movies or ads, look at what kind of technique they're using. And of course, they have other things like jibs or steady rigs, but look at what they're using and how they're telling that story and use that in your own productions. Anyway, I hope this helps. Please subscribe, comment what your favorite kind of shooting is if you're really a fan of the handheld like myself, or maybe a gimbal, or maybe you're just loving that tripod look. Let me know what your favorite is. I'd kind of like to get a feel on what other people are into. And also let me know what other kind of content you want. I'm kind of having fun just making these little videos, and so if I can do more of this and you're finding benefit in it, I'm a fan.